All right, let's go ahead and get started today. Again, thanks for joining me and taking your time out. As always, we start with a homework review, and every week we end with a homework assignment. The goal here is that you guys take steps every single week to improve your business. And if you can do this every single week, even if the goal doesn't seem like it's that massive, like it's going to really make a change in your business, if you're chomping at the bit to be making money and you want to tackle big projects, don't dismiss these goals. If you do these things, at the end of 12 weeks, you'll have completely transformed your business. If you don't do these things and you keep waiting for that great big thing that's life-changing, then when I tell you that big thing, you won't have any of the systems in place to be there. Homework review right now is read 15 minutes daily through your standard forms. This should be a daily habit that you do. Your purchase contract, your basic addenda. If you're a Utah real estate agent, the MLS, the Utah Association of Realtors, just added 7 new forms that you should be familiar with by now. This should be a habit. And those forms, by the way, will directly affect your business every day because they're very common situations that we run into that the state deemed it necessary to create new forms for us. So make this a priority for yourself, all right? We reviewed this just a couple of days ago with all our brokers in the state of Utah. And there was a couple forms in there that we needed to all discuss together. So as you guys review them, if you have questions, take those questions to your brokers. But this is your toolbox. Make sure you understand it. If you feel like you're a pro on the standard forms, get in and review your state law. Sometimes they make changes to it. Sometimes you get fuzzy ideas. Sometimes you go to CE classes where they actually teach wrong information. I've seen it all. Make sure that you're responsible for your own knowledge. It's not your broker's responsibility to make sure that you know your stuff, okay? Nobody can replace you in the equation. Your clients are paying for you, not for your broker. They're paying for your knowledge. And your broker is there as a safeguard. That doesn't supplant your responsibilities. All right. As we start talking about time management, let's talk about what it's worth here. Sorry, I've got a question I need to Okay, somebody asked if the class has started or does he just have a bad internet connection. So again, let me check with you guys. If you guys can hear me okay, click the webinar dashboard button. Okay, he said he's got it figured out. All right, and that's great. If you have questions, comments, type them in, let me know. I'll go ahead and lower those hands. But that's one of the beauties of taking this training live is that if you have a question, type it in so I can help you out. All right, so as we start talking about time management, I want you to start to realize what your time is worth so that you can start treating it differently. And like I said, when I understood this concept, this absolutely changed my business. So if you have a goal of earning $100,000 a year, and that's what I like to have as a goal for new agents, and a lot of older agents or experienced agents have not hit that level consistently. If you're at that level consistently, you have a different set of problems that time management can help you with because you start to feel overwhelmed at that level with consistent 2 or 3 transactions a month. But until you hit that level, a lot of times you operate on a different mindset. I'll give you a quick example. My first job, I was making minimum wage, okay? And so for some reason that tends to stick in my mind that I don't know what it was, 5 1/4 or something like that. So even as I advanced up through different jobs through my career and everything, and I got into real estate, and there's a title company offering to take me to lunch, which is cool, by the way. That's nice. They're nice people and stuff. But I would find myself going on 2-hour lunches because we would chat and we would have fun. And that was great. And it was a really nice break from the day. And I thought, wow, that's cool, a free lunch. And when I started looking into this, if I have a goal of $100,000 and I take a 2-hour lunch, that 2-hour lunch costs me $100 because every hour is worth $50. So if you want to earn $100 or $100,000 a year, then you have to start treating your time like it's worth $50 an hour. That means that you become very picky about what type of activities you spend your time on. For example, very common for realtors to go golfing a lot. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself. That's fun. That's part of the benefit of being self-employed. However, for a lot of newer agents, they look and they see these experienced agents out there golfing all the time, and they think that's the lifestyle of a realtor. I have all this free time. Now, I've been there, and I've seen the people that go golfing a lot. I know people that go golfing a lot. However, when they built their business, they didn't build it golfing every day. They built it through a lot of long, hard hours. They've got their business to the point now where they can take 2 or 3 leads during their 18 rounds of golf. People are calling them. Okay, they've built their business to that point, so they have that luxury. But for somebody starting out trying to get to this $100,000 mark, that's not a luxury you have. You have to spend your time like it's worth more. So that day golfing trip or whatever, yeah, it might cost you $30 or $40 for the golfing, but it costs you $300 for the time. And so when your friends call you up and say, hey, let's go hit the courses today, you think, do I want to spend $300 on that today, or do I want to wait and do it Friday? And you can make whatever day you want your day off when you're self-employed. And so quite often, actually Thursdays for me, I usually take a couple hours and I go out with my wife to lunch, and we have an afternoon date. I do these webinars from home usually, so I'm not traveling into the office. I try to schedule my appointments a little bit thinner on Thursdays, and that's the time that works well for me. However, there's other days, Saturdays and quite often evenings, where I'm working. That's why I like to take a little bit of time, date time, I guess, with my wife on Thursdays. So I guess my point here is look at the number that you want to earn over here on this left column. See how much your hourly rate is worth, and then start thinking differently. And then I also want you to lastly use this last column here. Every one of us can identify 1 hour a day that we waste. And it could be YouTube videos because there's some fun stuff out there. It could be Facebook. It could just be, I don't know, lots of different areas that we could waste an hour a day. We could give ourselves a $12,000 raise with an hour a day that we've wasted. Okay, if we could reclaim that 1 hour, not work extra hours. I'm not talking about working any more time at all. And in fact, when we go through this time management here, I'm going to show you how to work less hours and make more money, because you identify these hours that are wasted during your day. You get more effective and more efficient with your time. You can actually work less hours and make more money, because you're giving yourself, just in identifying 1 or 2 hours a day, and identifying 1 or 2 hours a day that you've lost or wasted, you can give yourself a $12,000, $24,000 raise by identifying a couple of those hours and reclaiming that. All right, so talking about giving yourself a raise. Say you want to do you're doing 1 transaction a month. That's decent. It's consistent income. $4,500 because it's a $150,000 transaction. A couple of the areas that I work, smaller homes, this is their average value. So this should be a pretty conservative value for anybody listening. That's what we're going to work off. If you have bigger homes in your area, that's great. It just means you're making more. You work 40 hours a week, 4 weeks a month. So that's 160 hours worked. That means you're making $28 an hour. Now that's not bad. Okay, I remember my first managerial position straight out of college making about, well, just under $50,000 a year, which at the time was pretty good. And when I actually calculated my hourly rate, which was a mistake because it totally depressed me, as a manager I wasn't getting paid for overtime. I was working nearly 80 hours a week as a manager, and I was probably making about $11, $12 an hour. So if you're making $28 an hour, that's not terrible. Nothing wrong with that. It's a decent wage. However, it's not going to get you rich, and it's not going to pay for your retirement. being self-employed, there's nobody dumping money into a retirement fund for you. So we've got to boost this up a little bit. And again, we want to shoot for $100,000 a year in income, because for most people that can give them a fairly comfortable lifestyle and get them a little bit ahead. So if we want to give ourselves a raise, we don't work any more hours. So our hours stay the same, close 2 transactions a month, and now we're making $9,000 a month instead of the $4,500. We just give ourselves a 100% income raise. Now, this is crazy, okay? This is Twilight Zone material we're talking about here. Again, my first job, minimum wage, I remember my first raise was 25 cents, all right? If I start talking about professionals, teachers, my dad was a school teacher. In order for him to get a $5,000 a year raise, not a month, $5,000 a year, he had to go to 2 more years of school, get his bachelor's degree. He's working full-time, raising 5 kids at the time, still going to school at night, and do that for 2 years to get his, sorry, not his bachelor's, his master's degree. So he got his master's degree, and that got him a $5,000 a year raise. This kind of stuff is extremely common out in the, I'm going to call it the quote-unquote real world, all right? The real world way to get a raise is you've got to hustle. You've got to work longer hours. You've got to really prove yourself to the boss that you're worthy of that. And then you get a couple $1,000 a year. Now in real estate, if you can manage your time better, which as we'll discuss a little bit later, it's really about managing yourself, because we all have the same 24 hours. It's how well we can control ourselves, which, by the way, makes this the very most difficult training of any that I give, because learning self-control is something that most people never master their entire lives. I certainly haven't been doing it, and I've been training on this for over 10 years. This is a challenge. It's something that, one of the reasons I encourage you to keep attending these trainings even after you've been through all 12 topics with me, because bad habits creep in, and self-mastery is really the final goal here. It changes everything about you. I don't know how many of you know Kenny Parcell. A lot of people know Kenny all around the country. He is one of the best people, if not the best person, when I stop and think of people that have self-mastery down. He has rigid self-control in every aspect of his life that I know him on. You know, his time with his family, the way he cares for himself physically, his attention to work. I've been able to meet him at his office and see how he interacts with his staff there. I love watching Kenny as an example. It's it's inspiring to me. So this is what we're talking about. If we can develop a little bit more self-control like that, we don't have to work harder. We just take better advantage of the time that we do have in each day. And there's no other industry that's like that. There's nowhere else that you can go out and double your income by simply working a little bit smarter day. So I hope you guys appreciate the opportunity that you have here in real estate. Now I'm going to, let's see. I wanted to show you this. Again, for any of you that arrived late, this calculator is available for you to download directly from the handout, so you don't have to email me and ask for a copy of it. But this is something that I've used that I think is a pretty cool deal here that tells us the value of our time. So again, I'm working off the average sales price of $150,000. Let's say that 3/4 of the homes that I list, I actually sell, because some of them I won't sell. They're overpriced, and we can't get the price down enough. We don't have enough equity to do so. What percentage of listing appointments do I go on that I convert to listings? And if I'm a brand new agent, this number might be 50%. So you can play with these numbers. You can edit them right here. You just enter your answers here. You don't mess with any of the rest. But let's say that every listing appointment that I go to, I only convert 1 out of 2. Now, as you get more experience, you'll convert almost everything you go to. Okay, but for now, let's say I can convert 1 out of 2. If you're tracking your numbers, then you should know the answer to this next question. How many owners do you need to talk to, or letters mailed, or phone calls, or door knocking, whatever? How many people do you need to talk to get that 1 listing appointment? Let's say that that's 100 people that you talk to get 1 appointment. And if you don't know your numbers, then I've got some forms available for you. I think we've got them on the Elevate site as well. If you go to Elevate and Forms, I believe we have this for you, but you can start tracking your contacts every day and figure out what your numbers are. But let's say that it's 100, and we want to make $100,000 a year. This tells us the value of our time and the value of the activities that we're doing. How many calls do I need to make a day? About 25. So I had an agent email me this morning, actually, asking, hey, I'm taking this, I think it was the Buffini training, but it's not doing enough for me. What do I need to do to hit this? Now, I've worked with some agents that are fresh out of the box and gotten them to $100,000 a year before. Hold on, I've got a question typed in here. The name of the forms on Elevate. That's a great question, and I don't know. In fact, let me add the file here to your handouts. I've never tried to add one in the middle of a webinar. I don't know if I can even. You know what? Email me for this one. I'll email you the form. Send me an email at brokerericlee@gmail.com, and I will email you the form that you track your daily calls with, okay? Because I am not sure if that one is on the Elevate site or not. But let's say that, going back to this scenario here, if I make 24 calls a day, then let's see, as a result of the calls I get, I'll get a quarter of a listing appointment a day. So I'll get about 1 listing appointment a week. Right there, 1.23 a week. That'll give me about 5 listing appointments a month. I'm going to actually take 2 to 2.5 of those appointments, and I'll close 1 to 2 homes a month, about 2 homes. Here's the real kicker here. Each call that I make is worth $17 almost. That should be inspiring to you. Where else can you go? I mean, if somebody showed up right now on your doorstep and said, I will give you $17 per call, not per hour, $17 per call if you'll make calls for me all day, every single one of us would sign up. So I want you to start thinking of your business that this is the money-making activities, all right? The value of each listing appointment then is $1,600, and each listing's worth $3,300 because we're only, you know, even though it's $4,500, we're only closing 75% of them. Okay, but that still gives us a value of here $17. As we improve our skills and we start converting a higher number, now each call is worth $25 to me. So as you improve your skills, your hourly rate goes up automatically. Again, there's no other industry like that. I'm going to close that and go back to our slideshow. So what I want you to get out of this so far is that we're a unique business that if you learn self-control and time management, then you can do amazing things with your income, all right? So we've got this question that realtors ask me quite often. Sorry, I've got another question that's been typed in. Let me address that real quick. Okay, so the forms that are there, this is another agent that typed in. The forms that are on the Elevate site, we have the Daily Business Plan Guide and the one where you track your calls, the Daily AMP Form Expanded. That's where you plan your day in advance. But the tracking one is actually, that's a little bit different, and I don't think they have it on there. So email me for the one that I use. I use little hash marks, and I've got a form that gives me a value of different things that I'm doing. So if you want that, by the way, thanks for typing that in, Mr. Anderson. All right. Agents come to me and say they're a little bit frustrated. People don't treat them professionally. They're getting beat up on commissions. How do we become professional? And you guys have probably heard the saying, whoe'er thou art, act well thy part. This is what I want you to do. If you want to become a professional, if you want to be treated like a professional, then you need to act like a professional. I've had agents go to webinar or to seminars where somebody stands up in front of them on stage and says, you guys can make as much money as attorneys and doctors, and that's true. We've got agents making more than most attorneys and doctors. And, you know, how crazy would it be if you went into your doctor and he said you needed a surgery and you said, all right, let's do it for half of that cost, and then I'll go with you. You know, we don't dicker like that with those professionals. So the trainer then says, you guys need to act like that professional. You know, never discount your commissions, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you can tell how I feel about that. Those agents come out of that thing and they start to demand that people treat them professionally, but they don't act like professionals. And I've seen agents do it time and again, and they're driven out of business within 1 year. You can't just demand that people treat you professionally unless you're walking the walk and talking the talk. You have to act like a professional. So how does a professional act? I've got this saying down here, and this changed my life: working when you're working and play when you're playing. Now, this can be equally emphasized on both sides of that. The work when you're working part. How does a professional business operate? They all have posted hours. For me, I start at 9 o'clock in the morning, I go till 6 o'clock at night, and occasionally I'll work later if I have showings or something like that, or a file that needs a little bit of extra attention. But every agent that I meet and interview that's in my office knows 9 to 6. Okay? If they call me afterwards, they can leave a voicemail and I'll call them back in the morning. Every client that I sign on knows my hours because I tell them 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Occasionally, if I have my phone on me afterwards, I can take the calls, but otherwise I return it first thing in the morning. I post my business hours by telling everybody. And during those hours of 9 to 6, I'm not goofing around. Okay? I go to work and I get my job done. The second part can be equally important, and that's the play when you're playing part. So one of the ways that I can get my family to support me so well in my work hours and my work efforts is that I do spend time with them when I'm not working. Okay? And when we get to this ideal week plan, you'll see why this had to come about. My wife drew a line in the sand for me, and she said, when we're at the dinner table, you're taking phone calls. When we're watching a movie, you're taking phone calls. When we should be at the kids' soccer game, you're taking phone calls. She's like, we didn't sign up for this life. We want a dad in the family. You can't keep doing this. And I took a step back and I said, you know what? I didn't want this life either. And I was fully prepared to take a major pay cut. But I was dedicated to my family. Family came first to me. So I made a big decision, and I put together this ideal work week that I'm going to share with you guys here shortly. But it included some playtime. So now, even though I'm tired at night, my two littlest ones, I got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old last night begging me to play soccer. And I'm tired, and it's been a long day. But again, the thought comes into my head, I need to take time for these things. These are the things that are important to me. And my kids won't always come begging me to play with them, because I've also got some teenagers, and they certainly don't beg me to come play with them anymore. I need to take advantage of it while I've got it. So I got out there, and we played soccer out in the field last night. So both of those things are important. And in order to have people treat you professionally, you need to set boundaries. I cringe every time. In fact, on Facebook the other day, there was this funny thing that somebody had posted that just talked about all of the, it showed a couple where the wife was a real estate agent, the husband wasn't, and she had signs scattered everywhere, and they had a date night plan, and she gets a phone call, and she's like, oh yeah, I can be there right now. And there were hundreds of comments. And I started reading through the comments, and nearly all of them, at least 90% of them were like, oh, I can so relate to this. And I got frustrated with it. And I typed in and I said, if you relate to this, you're doing the business wrong. Nobody should relate to this. And I had a few people like my comments. And there were, like I said, maybe 10% of people typed in comments that don't work like that. That's insane. You know? So you have to be a professional, which means you don't allow other people to walk all over you. And the way that happens is you work hard during the time that you have. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We've answered this question. Do you manage time or you manage yourself? The answer is you manage yourself. Time's going to keep ticking no matter what you do. How well can you exercise self-control? There's a lot of things that derail us from our self-control. Maybe we've got clients or activities that are very time-consuming. Some clients can be very demanding. Some of the activities that we engage in, especially the things that we hate to do, they can consume a lot of our time. We find ourselves postponing them. And when we think, I'm going to get that done, well, let me just check Facebook really quick. And rather than just getting it in and getting the crap work done, we find distractions in order to try to put that stuff off. Okay, for me, for a number of years, that was paying bills. At a point in my life when I owned multiple properties, I was paying, what was it, $700 or $900 a month in late fees. I never got a 30-day late, so my credit was fine, but I never paid it on the first day. It was always at least 15 days late. $700 to $900 a month in late fees, that's a serious system malfunction. That was one of the first things that My Ideal Week fixed. Trouble with family and friends adjusting to the idea of self-employment. Again, maybe it's their day off. They call you in the middle of the day, hey, let's do this, or let's go to lunch. Or your spouse is saying, hey, can you run the kids to school? Can you pick them up from school? Hey, Johnny's sick. Can you stay home while I go shopping? Lots of times they're not treating you like a professional. These are all system malfunctions. Distasteful activities like paying your bills, or a lot of agents, I'm going to pick on some of the older agents here, maybe learning your skills. I've got agents that don't know how to log into their email accounts because their skills have deteriorated so much. They've ignored this task because it's hard for them. And so they've put it off and put it off for decades to the point where they can't hardly function in the current world. Learning dot loop. A lot of agents, oh, I don't know how to do that. You need to learn. Okay, this is the way that the industry is going. Electronic signatures are here. You need to learn the software. You need to devote some time to yourself to being an expert. This is what a professional does. Okay, if there's a recent surgery out there, a new procedure that can save 20% more lives or leave less scarring, wouldn't you hope that your surgeon would get himself trained on that latest procedure? If you showed up and your surgeon is operating from 200 years old experience and he pulls out a saw to cut off your leg, gives you a wooden stick to bite on, you're probably not going to go to that surgeon. Probably run out of there screaming. And yet we have realtors operating with skills that are seriously out of date because technology scares them. Overwhelmed with paperwork. Look at your desks. If they're filled up with paper, if you've got sticky notes scattered everywhere, system malfunction. Overwhelmed with the learning curve. I don't know who isn't as a new agent. You finish real estate school, you realize, man, they didn't teach us anything about how to do the job. I know a few laws I'm not supposed to break, but I have no idea how to do this business. Big learning curve. Again, one of the reasons I do this week by week is so that you have a chance to take it in digestible chunks, okay? Phone calls at all hours of the day and night. That's a system malfunction. It means you're not operating like a professional. And a general feeling of being overwhelmed. This comes on all of us, and I'm going to show you ways to help reduce that. Your ideal week plan. What I want you to do here, and this is the exercise. If you're at your desk, you can do it right now with me, is you get a blank sheet of paper, and you're going to list all of the things you would do, just activities that you would do in your perfect ideal work week. Okay, not your perfect vacation week, your perfect work week. What kind of things would you do? Now, prospecting should be at the top of the list. We did that exercise with the goal calculator, and you can see that your calls are worth $17 to $25 an hour, even with basic beginner skills. So prospecting, making those calls and the contacts, that should definitely be the top item on your list for your ideal work week. Okay, Staying on top of your listings and files that are under contract, making sure that things aren't falling through the cracks, that's part of the job. Meeting with assistants, sales meetings, trainings like today's, all of this stuff should be in your schedule. If you don't have an assistant, you've got sales training meetings, you should go to those. Times for showings, client meetings, responding to phone calls, paperwork, study. These are just a sampling of some of the things that should go into your ideal work week list. Now, don't worry about this being perfect, okay? In fact, I can guarantee you it won't be the first time you do it. Make your first ideal week. It will last you a week, and you'll notice problems in it almost immediately. Make a note of those problems like any professional business would, and refine it and tune it up a little bit and do it again the next week, okay? So first of all, on a blank sheet of paper, you make a list of all the things that you're going to put in there. Now we do what Stephen Covey called First Things First. He's got a book entitled that, First Things First. We look at those big things on our list and we put those in our calendar first. You can tell when I did this, this was printed on May of 2006, so it's going back 10 years. And like I said, this was a turning point in my life. And I put this together because my wife had drawn a line in the sand saying you can't treat the family like this anymore. So this is my old schedule. It doesn't apply at all to my business today, and I'm not putting this up here as an example that you should follow. Everybody's ideal week will be fairly unique to them, and it will be unique to that point in your life. Like I said, this may be good for 1 week only, and this one really was good for about 1 week. But here's the deal, okay? My thought was, oh boy, sorry. For some reason with an Apple, the mouse is hypersensitive. So I try not to use the mouse at all. I just use my clicker keys to go through this. All right. My thought was this. Mondays was family night. Fridays was date night. Wednesdays, because we had young kids at the time, was my wife's night out with her friends, so she could go out and get a break just by herself. This is the plan I put together to try to respect my family. Saturdays, I didn't book anything, but I was open for showing appointments if necessary, and Sundays was my day off. Okay, I decided I would not take calls, anything on Sunday, and to this day I turn my phone off and I leave it off, which is frustrating for a lot of people that try to get a hold of me, but for me, it's a dream come true. I get 1 full day where I don't get bothered at all by my phone. Now, you can't see a lot of the stuff on here, but I figured if I'm ending work at 6 o'clock, I'm going to have a lot of people calling me. There's going to be a lot of messages, and I need to tell everybody I'll return your calls first thing in the morning. So this, what you can't see, it was check emails and phone messages. So for 30 minutes, I would check and I would make a list of people I needed to call back, and then the next hour would be returning calls and emails. Okay? I don't remember at this point what I did from 10:30 to 11. 11 to 12 was prospecting calls. I had this crazy dream I could have an hour-and-a-half lunch every day. That lasted, like I said, for a week, and then it turned into a half-hour lunch. I did trainings every day at that point, studied for an hour a day as well, client follow-up, and then paperwork. And I had lots of paperwork. So this was roughly my first week's goal. Like I said, it lasted for about a week, and then I trimmed down my lunch times to about a half hour. I think I trimmed my studying down to about 30 minutes as well, which opened up other time for bigger things. So if we go to Stephen Covey's First Things First book, he talks about getting your priorities in there first. For me, my biggest priority honestly wasn't work, it was family time. I needed to schedule some family time, and I needed to stick to that, okay? That way I can tell my family, this is your time. And when they come to me and say, hey, Dad, it's 3 o'clock. Can you come pick me up from school, or can you play or whatever? I said, no, family, we've signed off on this. So I would encourage you. Step number 1, make your plan. Step number 2, go to your spouse and say, this is my plan. Can you support this? Well, no, because remember, we've got this and this on these days. Okay, you go, edit your plan, Now go back and say, can you support this? Yes, I think I can support this plan. Fantastic. Now you go to the kids and say, kids, this is my plan. This means during these hours I'm working, okay? I commit to being to your ball games on Saturday. I commit to we'll do something fun together on Monday night as a family or whatever. Make your commitments to your family. First things first. Now when it comes to work, first things first. Get those big things in there, and the big things are the money-making activities. So that's your prospecting calls, your notes that you're writing. The money-making activities is communicating with people, okay? Building relationships with people. So make your ideal week list. Now, I printed this out, and I taped it next to my desk, okay? Obviously, this wasn't my actual calendar. This was my training calendar. I was supposed to try to fit my life into this plan, and it was hard. I would have clients call me that hadn't been trained because I hadn't talked to them about this first. They would call me and say, hey, we just found a lovely home. We'd like to go out and see it right now. And I would have to try and get them to fit my plan. And I would say, actually, we're going to need a little bit of notice. Can we go Tuesday? If they called me Monday, could we go Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m.? Yeah, sure, that would probably work. Now, most of the time, that worked. Sometimes they said, you know what, it's a hot market, we're going to lose it if we don't see it right now, and I would have to scramble. But that was the exception rather than the rule. For most agents, the rule is they're scrambling all the time, okay? Try first to get them to fit into your schedule. And a lot of the times, that's what happened. They would say, oh yeah, actually tomorrow works fine for us. Good, because we typically need 24 hours to schedule showings anyways, so that works great. I'll have you, 6 to 8. And instead of just seeing one home, let's see if we can see 3 or 4 in that area so that you have more to compare it to. That's going to make my trip, my driving time, much more valuable to show 4 homes in the same area rather than just one home. And it's going to increase my odds that they're going to actually buy one of those homes as well. And they're going to appreciate me a little bit more because they feel like I'm going the extra mile. I'm not just showing the one home. I'm showing 3 or 4 when they originally asked for 1. So that's the extra mile work. So that's, once you've got the plan, you've got your family to buy on board with it. When you meet with your clients, tell them this is my plan. 9 to 6, these are my posted hours, basically. Clients buy onto it, and then you've got to encourage them to stick to it. Okay, so when they call you, again, you can make exceptions if you need to, but most of the time, people will stick to your plan. So 3-step process of becoming a master of time management. You know what, I'm going to go back to this because I want to tell you a little bit how this evolved. I already told you about my bills, right, how out of control that was. Well, I had an ideal week where I had literally 3 hours booked every Monday for getting on top of my finances. That lasted me, honestly, it took about a month. I called my CPA. I had to learn a new piece of software that he advised me to get, so some tax software. I had to learn how to use that. I had to figure out how to join that with my bank. I had to start balancing my checkbook, basically, for the first time. Really some seriously out-of-date skills. It took me a month doing 3 hours every Monday to get on top of it. Now it takes me about 30 minutes a month. Okay, so that ideal week lasted for a month, and then I changed it again. And I opened up a lot more time, but I got on top of my business and I started to manage my finances. So when you see flaws in your business like that, schedule a time for it, get it fixed. All right, that's what a professional does. If you see flaws in your education, get it fixed. Schedule time for daily study. Make sure you reserve time for these classes that we do on Thursdays. Because even if you know all of this stuff, because I know all this stuff, I've been teaching it for a long time, I don't do all of this stuff. Bad habits creep in all the time. So refresh yourself. All right. Step number 1, and we've thankfully talked about this in detail the last few weeks. Set goals, SMART goals, know where you're heading, how to have a motive that will keep you on track. That's accomplished with our goals and our affirmations. So if you've got your affirmations and your goals in place, if you've done your homework from the last few weeks, then step number 1 is done. You're 1/3 of the way to becoming a master of time management. You know where you're going, you know what's important, and you have steps broken down to help you every day accomplish that. Step number 2 is using these forms that we're talking about. Okay, that daily AMP form that I created for you, that is on the Elevate site. The monthly business plan form, that's on the Elevate site. The one where you do the little check marks tracking your days, that's the one that you may need to email me for because I'm not sure if it's there. But you plan every day in advance. These are the key things I need to get done today, because you will get pulled in a million different directions, and if you don't have that written down in front of you, then you'll get to the end of a long day where you've worked extremely hard and not have accomplished anything important to you. All right? So your goals are going to be completely ignored. They're going to be blown off. They're going to be wiped out because you don't have a plan moving you forward. Okay? This business can beat you up that way. You can get pulled apart. So have your plan written down in front of you every day. Plan it out in advance. Now, if you're doing that, we've already covered those 2 things. Last of all, on your daily AMP form, you have a chance for a journal at the end, a journal entry. Evaluate yourself, measure your progress, and adjust as needed. A couple weeks ago, we talked about being your ideal you, your best self. And one of the things in there at the very end, we talked about the 3-1 rule. I can't remember the doctor's name right now that talked about that with us. But basically, identify 3 great things you did that day and 1 thing that needs improvement. Okay? You're powerful. You've got great things going for you. You can do this business. Trust in that. Identify 3 great things that you did that you want to keep doing, that you want to, maybe you want to fine tune a little bit, but 3 things that happened really well for you that day, 1 thing that you can improve, okay? If you can do these 3 things, you can master your time, you can master yourself. Have your goals, make a plan to achieve those goals, and record your successes at the end of every day, and be truthful with yourself, okay? And if you identify something that derailed you, well, today the title company derailed me because they just stopped in. Put something in place that stops that from happening. Okay? If it's your family that derailed you, have that conversation with your spouse and your children. Get them to buy into your plan. Okay? If you realize that you didn't have a plan because you didn't do this homework, make the plan. Okay? That's your 1 thing you can improve on. So your homework for today is this. Make your ideal week list. Remember, don't be afraid to make changes to this as you go through your week. Okay, you might put this into your calendar guide, and at the end of the day, when you do your journal and you review things, you're like, man, I didn't have any time to do this, and this is important. I need to get that in my calendar guide. Don't be afraid to make changes to it, okay? Schedule 15 minutes each morning to plan. Have your objective in mind. That means you're looking at your affirmations. Have solid, achievable steps towards that objective. So you've got your affirmations and your goals. Now make a plan of what you're going to do that day to accomplish those things or to move yourself closer to those things. Because most goals we're not accomplishing every day. We're just moving ourselves further in that direction. And then at the end of the day, plan 15 minutes to record in your journal. What did you do to achieve your objective? Number 1 area you can improve. Use that 3-to-1 ratio. 3 things you did great, 1 thing you can improve. Guys, thank you for joining me and taking that time. Again, if you want that 1 form, email me at brokerericlee@gmail.com, and have a great week. Thank you.